Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. Gameweek 14 is done, and we have 24 weeks to go. The most important thing I can tell you is that the next game week starts on Tuesday. Today's Monday, so tomorrow, December has begun. Do not forget to make your transfers. Okay, let's go. Arsenal 2, Wolves 1. Saka and Odegaard were the goal scorers for Arsenal. Cunha was a goal scorer for Wolves. This was Saka's first goal since game week 7. He created 4 chances against Wolves. Odegaard was the most creative player in this game, and Arsenal were dominant throughout this game. To be honest, 2-1 isn't exactly a fair reflection of how the game went. It could have and should have been more. Arteta seems to know how to balance his squad. He doesn't have the problems that others face when they're coming in from Europe. Tomiyasu and Zinchenko had the assists. If you haven't seen the goals, Odegaard's goal in particular was really great teamwork. Semedo had the assist for Cunha's goal. I thought Wolves would give a better account of themselves since they have been really disturbing the top teams this season. But it wasn't meant to be this time. He, and by he I mean Mr. O'Neill, couldn't quite figure out how to play against Arsenal. And they were punished. Nketiah came on and hit the post. It was painful, but then also I removed him. He's great, but just not when you need him to be. For the first time in a long time, Arsenal conceded a goal. I was very happy because I do not have an Arsenal player, and I had been thinking about getting into that defense, but I said, let me hold out for one more week because I always feel like Wolves have a goal in them, kind of like Luton. Raya was back in goal, and it's bye-bye Ramsdale. Odegaard finished with 3 bonus points. Tomiyasu finished with 2. Saka and Bentley from Wolves finished with 1. I don't know about you guys, but when I saw Bentley, I had to remember David Bentley from Arsenal back in the day. Throwback, right? I thought he had so much potential to be good, but things just didn't quite work out for him. He's kind of like a Ross Barkley, but from back then. Brentford 3, Luton 1. The goal scorers in this game were Mopé, me, Baptiste. And for Luton, it was Brown. And in case you're noticing, this is the second game in a row that Brown has scored. Also, randomly, Mopé has had a goal or an assist in the last 3 games for Brentford, just in case you're fishing for differentials. It seems with Brentford every other week a different defender is scoring, and we had Mr. Me this time. Every time I looked at the scoreboard in this game, I was just saying, okay, 1-0, okay, is it Mbumo? Okay, 2, is it Mbumo? Okay, 3, is it Mbumo? I swear fantasy can be stressful sometimes. It makes you so individualistic in your approach. You don't even care about the team. It's just like, is my individual performing for his team? Or they're winning 100-0, has my individual scored? No? Then that scoreline doesn't matter, you know? Thankfully, Mbumo had an assist. Mbumo, me, and Lewis Potter had an assist. Ross Barkley, who I just kind of spoke about before, had the assist for Luton. And just by that, you know me got the 3 bonus points. Something random, Mbumo became the 3rd player in this year, 2023, to score 10 plus goals and provide 10 plus assists after Saka and Son. Impressive. It means we are truly holding him for a reason. Luton got their customary goal. It seems like it's really hard to put them out. And at this point, you should just expect a goal from them. It's just a matter of who. Me got the 3 bonus points. Mopé got 2. and Brown got 1. Mopley and Brown could be good differentials if you're fishing. And if you're wondering why I'm pointing out differentials, well, it's a fantasy podcast. And also, if you listen to the interview with Mr. Mike Wow, he had such interesting ideas about differentials and how to use them. Listen to that podcast. Also related to interviews, our group leader, goodness gracious me, formed his team based on me, or rather his team name from me. Burnley 5. You heard correct. Burnley 5. Sheffield 0. Burnley 5. I'm just saying that again because I'm not sure that'll happen again. So, if there's only one thing we can say about Burnley, is that they're clearly better than the other 2 championship sides, which is why they were number 1 this season. And they have only beaten these 2 teams this season so far. So, I guess you could say the best championship team won. This was a relegation derby, and it was very important to win this game for both sides. Sheffield got a red card when it was 2-0, and from that point on, it was done. They were already down, and at that point, it was unlikely that they could salvage anything. They gained another injury to make it, is it 10 or 11? They're just very unfortunate this year. Burnley got off to a great start, scored in the first minute, and then Brun Larsen scored against his former club. Amdouni then scored. Then my boy Kolyosho, the American, scored. And then Brownhill scored. It was a good goal. And Duki from distance. And that win put Burnley above Sheffield. Sheffield have conceded more than 5 goals 3 times this season. It's really not looking good for them. Clear relegation favourites, alongside with Burnley. So it finally means that Burnley have broken that curse of not having won at home. It had been 9 games since they last tasted victory at home. So for you guys who think that betting on the home team is always a good idea, not the case in Burnley. The assists came from Bayer, O'Shea, Taylor, and Amdouni. Bayer had 3 bonus points, Amdouni had 2, and Taylor had 1. For those of you who gambled with Burnley players like Alexander Mutune, well done. Well done. Nottingham Forest, 0. Everton, 1. Under Sean Dyche, Everton just seemed to have this spirit. Yes, they were beaten 3-0 last week, but if you take that result out of their last maybe 4 or 5 games, you'll see that they have been fighting, they have been playing well, and they have been difficult to beat. And this just continues that. It wasn't an easy game, but they got the job done. Dwight McNeil was the goal scorer. And for us Mykolenko holders and other people who have Everton defenders, except those who had Branthwaite at the back of their bench, not going to mention any names. It's at this point that I should mention that there were only 3 clean sheets this weekend. Burnley, Everton, and Newcastle. Everton are a very interesting side because they seem to struggle at home, but when they play away from home, they tend to have more success. Only Spurs have been more successful this season away from home than Everton. Branthwaite had 3 bonus points, Tarkowski had 2, and Pickford had 1. I won't lie, at this point, I am done with Areola, who's my keeper, and I'm looking into getting Mr. Pickford. Or just anyone else. I'm just done with Areola. West Ham don't seem to know what a clean sheet is. But then watch the space. As soon as they remove Areola, they're going to have 5 clean sheets in a row. Newcastle 1, Manchester United 0. If you listen to the last maybe 2-3 episodes, I talked about the next fixtures coming up for Manchester United. and I called them losable games. And this was the first of 5-ish losable games that Manchester United are going to face. They were awful. 1-0 is a very respectable looking scoreline, but it is the most dominant 1-0 performance you'll ever see. Man U did nothing. Nothing. There's nothing to write about. You know how they've been scraping by with those 1-0 wins? This is what happens when they play a good team. They were just lucky it wasn't more. Maybe they have luck on their side. They're just lucky to win 1-0, but also lucky to lose 1-0. This scoreline is way more respectable than their performance was. It's crazy how different the Man U in Europe looks versus the Man U in the Premier League. Quite a contrast. Anyway, our boy Gordon scored. And if you listen to the podcast with Mr. Mike, he said, Gordon has got something coming for us for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Well, week 1, he was correct. Gordon scored off an assist from Trippier. Trippier was immense in this game. For those of you guys who don't have him, I don't know what to tell you. He's just one of those guys. When Newcastle play well, he is the heart of it. And he usually outperforms other defenders in the same club, almost times 2. It's wild. Trippier got the 3 bonus points. Gordon got 2. Livramento got 1. Nick Pope got injured. And so, if you're looking for a differential and you want to get into the Newcastle defense, it may be time to look at Dubravka. 3.9, that's a bargain. Bournemouth versus Aston Villa. You know how I said that Brighton struggle after Europe? Well, in this game, Bournemouth were the better team, and it wasn't even close. Before the match, there was doubts as to whether Watkins would play or even start. And then he played 90 minutes. That's how fantasy is sometimes. Semenyo and Solanke scored for Bournemouth. Watkins and Bailey scored for Aston Villa. Solanke, and I'm not saying this just because I have him in my team, he should have had a hat-trick. He should have had a minimum of a hat-trick and maybe 4 goals. Emiliano Martinez stopped him 3 times at point-blank range. Solanke should have done better. Semenyo played as is expected to. He was dangerous. He was running. Bournemouth were just dangerous. Iraola has them playing a style of football that is quite captivating to watch. They are so dynamic and they run a lot. They really extend you. Maybe that's why they have so many fast players. You know, the manager for Bournemouth, Iraola, said something interesting at the end of the game. He said, at the beginning of the game, or like when I looked at the fixture list, if he told me that I would get a point, I would have been very happy. But then after we actually played this game, I feel like we deserved all the points, and he was not wrong. Something interesting happened on the Aston Villa front. Emery has lost faith in Cash. Well, let me not say lost faith. But for whatever reason, Cash did not play. Maybe it's to punish him for his poor performance of late. Or maybe he also has him in his fantasy team. Or maybe it could be just to show some sort of solidarity with Betancourt. To just be like, you can't just go around injuring guys, so you just go miss a game. Maybe something like that. I don't know. But he didn't play. And this has fantasy implications. For me, it means I'm done with him. I was looking for a sign, and this was it. I've removed him from my team. Outside this, I don't think this was a good game to prepare for Man City. I don't think they look as solid, but they'll be playing at home next, so who knows. Bailey scored a really good goal off a nice run. Watkins scored a good header to tie the game in the end. Diaby had the assist for Watkins' goal. So all of you Diaby holders, I'm sure you're just like, yeah. And then Christie and Kerkez had the assists for Bournemouth. Christie had the 3 bonus points, Watkins had 2, and Kerkez had 1. I honestly thought Martinez would have at least 1 bonus point. Chelsea 3, Brighton 2. I don't know how many times I need to tell you guys. Brighton after Europe suck. I even joked that they would be hammered. This wasn't quite hammering. And I think that's mainly because Chelsea got another red card for the second game in a row. Conor Gallagher got sent off when it was 2-0 or 2-1. Enzo scored 2 goals. Colwill scored 1. Buonanotte and João Pedro scored. The assists came from Badiashile, Mudryk and Nicholas Jackson. For Brighton, Lallana and Milner had the assists. This was not as competitive as it looked. Brighton did this squad rotation thing where after Europe they put in a different starting team from that which started on Europe, and then they didn't quite have their game together. Then they brought in all the big boys after the half, but it was just a little too late, and they couldn't take advantage of the red card. Although having said that, Sanchez did make 7 saves, so it wasn't like they did not try. It just didn't feel like they were going to make any progress. Even their goal to make it 3-2 came in the 90th minute. So when you see 3-2, it's a bit misleading. Chelsea continue to be a perplexing team. It's very hard to know who will perform. Enzo had 2 goals, Colwill had a goal, Badiashile, Mudryk and Nicholas Jackson had an assist. Yet, I don't know how many managers have any of those players in our teams. It's quite, maybe except Colwill, because I've seen him a bit, but the rest, I doubt it. Enzo had the 3 bonus points, Badiashile had 2, and Thiago Silva had 1. And thankfully, Thiago Silva has recovered from the mess that was last week. Buonanotte scored a really beautiful goal, and he got 1 bonus point. I'm not sure if that was why, but it was a really beautiful goal. Liverpool 4, Fulham 3. This game, I had Salah as my captain, so every time I got a notification, I was like, Salah scored? Salah assist? No. Salah scored? Salah assist? No. Salah goal? Oh, come on, guys. It was a tough game for those of us who captained Salah. This was a very lively game, end-to-end stuff. I mean, all of us predicted Liverpool to win, but the nature of how it happened, none of us could have seen coming. One major note about this game, all the goals were so beautiful. Trent Alexander-Arnold started off the game with a free kick which came off the back of Leno. So that was an own goal, but it was a really beautiful kick. In fact, Trippier must have watched this and was like, shit, I wish Onana was in the same position to score an own goal like Leno, because Trippier had a really beautiful free kick as well against Manchester United. McAllister scored an amazing goal. Endo Wataru scored another amazing goal. Trent scored. It was a good goal. It wasn't as good as the other 2, but on another day, it might have been the goal of the game. Fulham just did the business. They took advantage of all the lapses in concentration, and they just scored their goals. Tete scored a goal from out of nothing. Wilson's goal, the same. They could overread, good header. It was quite an interesting game. At one point, Liverpool were down 3-2, and then 5 minutes after that, or rather, in a 5-minute spell, they scored 2 goals to win the game. For all of you that own Darwin Nunez, man, that guy, he messed up Salah. Salah should have had easily 2 assists. Easily. Darwin was just, I guess that's what you get with him. The highs and the lows. This was a weekend of the lows. Trent had an assist. Salah had an assist. Tsimikas had an assist. Kearney had an assist for Fulham and Robinson. And Robinson is proving to be quite an interesting defender. Kelleher, I know that's not the right name, or rather the way to pronounce it, started in place of Alisson, who's injured. And if you're looking into a possible clean sheet from Liverpool, he could be your cheapest way into the Liverpool defence, considering they have Sheffield next. That may be a good bet. Trent had 3 bonus points. McAllister had 2. Robinson had 1. Random. Enzo and McAllister, the Argentines, World Cup winning Argentine players, scored their first goals this weekend for their new clubs. West Ham won, Crystal Palace won. Crystal Palace are a team that are going to struggle to create. They're kind of like Fulham, or maybe how Fulham used to be. They really struggled to create anything in this game. If not for the mistake by Mavropanos, I'm not sure if they would have been able to score in this game. Speaking of Mavropanos, he started this game for Zuma. This is the second time he has started for West Ham. The first time he started, he scored an own goal. The second time, he gave an assist to Edward, who happily accepted it and went on to score. For West Ham, Kudus continues his amazing form, and I'm sure many of you managers are starting to ask yourself why you don't have him into your team. Please, get him. He has an eye for goal. Kufal had the assist. Bowen was put up front as a striker. He had a chance right at the death, but that was it. Souček had a disallowed goal. West Ham were the better team, but they just couldn't get it done. I think this guy should give Mubama a chance. He played really well in pre-season. Moved Bowen back to this position like he likes on the wing. He'll be more useful there, but that's just me. Edward got the 3 bonus points. Kudus got 2, and Kufal got 1. And if you're looking for a differential, Kufal might be the kind of defender that you need, especially since it seems that no defender is keeping clean sheets nowadays. Now, the main event. Manchester City 3, Tottenham 3. Let me tell you, this game was fire. Fire, 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 follow me. Let me just start off by saying, Manchester City deserved to win this game. They created the most chances, the better chances, the clearest chances. Somehow they did not win. I used to play Football Manager, and there's a word that I learned when I was playing it. And the word is profligate. Profligate means to be wasteful. Man City were punished for the profligacy in front of goal. They have no one to blame but themselves. They should have won this game 5 or 6-3. Haaland missed a sitter in the 12th minute, and it almost set the pace, or rather the tone, for the rest of his game. He ended up with 2 assists, and that was great. I wasn't too happy because he wasn't my captain, but I know better than to bet against Haaland. Son scored in the first minute, and I was like, oh, yes, I've been rewarded for my faith in him. I have faith in Son to perform in big games, like a reverse Haaland. Ooh. But yeah, jokes aside, he just plays well in big games. So I told myself, if he doesn't score against City, then I'm removing him. Imagine that as a condition. That's how much faith I had in him. So now he's staying in my team. I honestly thought Spurs would be punished because they literally played 4 wing backs for their defenders. 4 of them. Like Udogie, Kulevsky, Pedro Porro, and Davis, like 4 wing backs. Ange plays Ange ball no matter what. Well done to him. He stuck to his guns and he was rewarded. So the game started with Son scoring a good goal, a run, typical dynamic run, unstoppable finish. Then he scored an own goal, which was a bit unlucky, of Alvarez. Alvarez had a cross, which sort of went in off Son. And then Foden scored a good goal after a good team move. And then Lo Celso scored a goal with a super finish. You know, sometimes these Argentine players just have class. And Lo Celso seems to be benefiting from everybody being unavailable. It's a good problem to have if you're a manager. Grealish then scored the third goal, and we thought it was done. And then Kulusevski came in with a thumping header, almost at the death. And then, controversially, Haaland was fouled, but not before a pass was launched for Grealish, who was all clear. All clear. And then the referee decides to stop the play and bring back the play. Oh my goodness. I don't understand why he did that. I don't understand why they did that. Because usually you are allowed to run, and then when the play comes to nothing, the game is stopped. But not before that. So what went wrong? What happened? Is there a conspiracy against Man City? Anyway, Haaland had 2 assists. Alvarez had 1. Johnson, Kulusevski, and Son had the assist for Spurs. And then when it comes to bonus, Kulusevski had 3 bonus points, Son had 2, and Foden had 2. When looking at performers this week, we have in the goalkeepers, Bentley, who had 8 points. For Wolves, he came on for Jose Sa, who got injured. Second, we have Trafford from Burnley, who had 7. Number 3 was Pickford, who had 7. Number 4 was Pope, who got injured, got 6. And Onana rounding up the 5 with 3. Remember, there were only 2 or 3 clean sheets this weekend. When it comes to defenders, me was a top-performing defender with 14. Number 2 was Trent with 13. Number 3 was Trippier with 12. Tomiyasu and Bayer were tied with 11 for number 4 and 5. The defenders really played well, because below that, you have Taylor with 10, Branthwaite with 9, O'Shea with 8, Tartakovsky with 8, Colville 7, 37, Livramento 7. Just in case you're wondering if there were any defenders that performed. When it comes to midfielders, Enzo was number 1, 14 points. Kulusevski, 12 points, number 2. Odegaard was 3rd with 10 points. Gordon was 4th, along with Son with 10 points. Then you have McAllister 9, Foden, Kudus 9 as well. Then you have Saka, Brownhill, Kolyosho, Brun Larsen, Dwight McNeil with 8. And then you have Bailey, Christie, Bonanotte, Wilson, Lo Celso with 7. Those are many midfielders to choose from. When it comes to forwards, Watkins was a top performer with 11. Amdouni, 2nd with 11 as well. Edward, 3rd with 9. Mope, 8. Haaland, 7. Solanke, 6. Rodriguez, 6. Brown, 6. Semenyo, 5. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Our league table. So, at the top, everything stays the same. Well, not quite the same. Goodness gracious me is still number 1 with 894 points. We have a new number 2, Vexity by Vignyadi. He has 70 points and 890, so he's only 4 points behind our leader. Why Are You Running is losing pace. I think he's getting a little tired. He got 55 points. He has 887. Number 4 is Don't Bottle It This Year. He got 65 points and he has 877. At number 5, we have a new entrant, Adan Rashid Ali, Highbury Memories. You can tell he's an Arsenal fan. He has 844 points. So between number 5 and number 4, there are 30 points. Well, 33. And less than 20 points between number 4 and number 1. It's getting quite close up there. At the bottom of the table, we have Washira Gitahi, who has 659 points. We have Thagana Gatheru, who has 665 at number 21. We have Team Kubwa, 687. So he has built a 20-point gap between him and number 21. And right ahead of him, by 7 points, is Mount Freemasons with 694. And 4 points ahead of him is the one and only Mr. Jeremiah Obiri. Let's look at his team. Okay. Wow. That one captain thing, it's not working today. But yeah, 39 points. He's just lucky that he has Haaland. When it comes to point tally leaders, your boy, Mr. Nash, Chege Team BV, along with Melvin Asakanya, both got 73 points. Guys, aren't you so privileged to be hosted by this guy who gets 73 points once in a while? This is my second time being a leader, first time being a joint leader. So I join Mike and Leon in 2. Following us was Vic City, which helped him really propel to number 2, especially since both Leons got 52 and 55 points respectively. After Vic City, we had 69 points by Peter Dennis, and that has helped him move to number 15, or rather stay there, but open up the gap. And then for number 5, in points tally, we are tied by Adan Ali, our newcomer, and Cheese Garnachos. The average points for this game week were 54. So if you got 54 and above, well done. If you don't, well, 50 is not bad. But if you got below that, keep trying. The highest points in this week, worldwide, was 114. It was a bench boost, and it was really boosted because he had Trent Alexander-Arnold on the bench. This guy must have slept, because I don't know how you don't start with Trent against Fulham. And then you got Zinchenko, who had 5 as well, and then 2. I'll put the team in the Instagram page for you guys to check out. There is no time. I do not even think I'll be able to interview anybody because the game week is tomorrow, you know? So, I'm sorry, my brother Melvin, we just won't be doing an interview. And I'm sorry to myself, although you guys are tired of listening to me anyway, so you're welcome. So, on Tuesday, we start off with Wolves versus Burnley. I think Wolves should be slight favourites, mainly because they've been a bit inconsistent, and ever since they lost Neto, they haven't been as good as they could be. However, Burnley aren't a good team. They will make mistakes, and Wolves can punish them. Cunha, Bellegarde, that Korean guy, these are players who will be influential in this game, and they have the capability to exploit the weaknesses that Burnley have. Kompany said that he has learned how to adjust to the Premier League, and maybe that 5-0 victory will make them a much more difficult opponent. And from that perspective, this is a kind of game that they would want, especially since Wolves are not in the best form. I wouldn't go as far as to say I think Burnley will keep a clean sheet, but their dangers will come from the usual suspects. Those being Koleosho, Amdouni. Outside those two, it's a gamble. even though it is a gamble to have Burnley players, unless you're just having them to have that 3.9, 4.0, and that you want to just be on the bench. Luton versus Arsenal. That is going to be an interesting game. Actually, I take that back. I don't know what I was thinking. It should be a straightforward game for Arsenal. Arsenal have been pretty consistent of late, and I believe that they will win this game. At this point, I don't need to tell you about Arsenal assets. You each have your favorite ones. It's just a matter of deciding whether you want a defender and which one. Because if you like Saka, you have him. If you like Odegaard, you already have him. And you know those are the two best midfielders in that team. Martinelli has been a bit slow this season. Jesus has been a bit slow this season. Having hated on Nketiah earlier on, this might be the kind of game where he scores 2 or 3 goals. This is a game week in which I enter into the Arsenal defense, and I'm trying to enter with Zinchenko. I want somebody who can create chances as well. And I'm hoping he will play. That will be now the issue with Arsenal defenders, not named Saliba. Luton tend to have a goal in them. Brown has scored 2 in a row. I don't know if that means anything because Arsenal are not as easy to score against. Morris is another option. I wouldn't be betting for Luton to get anything out of this game, but they tend to score. So there's that. Brighton are playing Brentford. This is a game to me that sounds like there will just be goals. Both teams play open football. Brighton will have recovered from their loss to Chelsea, and they should be better composed about themselves. I don't know if that's the right word, but they should just be better than they were. De Zerbi, he hasn't figured out his rotation. He has a thin squad, he needs to balance it. Is this game too soon? Will he rotate his squad more? That will be an issue. And therefore, it's very hard to say who will start and who won't start. But Mitoma is back. Ferguson will be back. I mean, he's there. Bonanote scored, so maybe he's the guy now. João Pedro is in great form for both Brighton in Europe and in the Premier League. It will be an interesting game. For Brentford, you know who to play. You know who they are. Well, I'm going to say something different this time. I'm going to say Mope has been very good of late. An involvement in the last 3 or 4 games. Bomo has been good. And then pick a random defender. It seems like they're taking turns, so maybe not me, but maybe it'll be Pinnock today or somebody else. Of course, you can never rule out Gross for Brighton. You just never can. So there's that. Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. It's very hard to pick a win in this one, especially since Bournemouth are better now. From Crystal Palace, Olise is good, Edouard is good. Those two seem to be the only ones really carrying the team right now. Their defense isn't as solid as it has been in the first half of this season. And by that I just mean the first 7 weeks. So I'm even thinking of moving away from Crystal Palace defense. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm thinking of Bournemouth defense. For Bournemouth, what can I tell you? Semenyo, Solanke, Tavernier scores when you don't want him to, so he might be the best kind of differential. Another differential might be Christie. He seems to be quite creative, and the bonus point seem to like him. Crystal Palace do have a favourable record, but they are not quite the same team. So I believe it will be open with goals. Speaking of another open game with the possibility of goals, Fulham versus Nottingham Forest. Isn't it just so hard to say one side will win? But you do know both sides will score. Fulham gave Liverpool a run for their money. Some say they could have even won that game. Wilson, Tete, de Cordova-Reid, they were also dangerous in that game. You can't count out Mr. Willian as well. For Nottingham Forest, you can't rule out Elanga, Wood, Gibbs-White, and their wing-backs. Mr. whether it be Toffolo or Aina or Aurier, they always seem to be capable of creating danger. Fulham have had the upper hand of late, but it won't be straightforward. Sheffield United versus Liverpool. Goodness. Do I need to say anything about this game? Okay, let me give it a go. Liverpool should win this game. Salah should be good, although he was a bit MIA this weekend, considering they scored 4 goals. However, I think this will be a return to form. Sheffield have conceded 5 goals in 3 games this season. I don't see why this can't be number 4. I know that Alisson is injured, so I've come in and I've brought in Kelleher. Is that how you pronounce his name? I know I'm probably wrong because it's Irish, and Irish names are tricky. But he is my goalkeeper now. I'm done with Areola. So I have him, Tsimikas, Salah, and I'm expecting 6-6-20. Those 3 players. From Sheffield, I expect nothing. For those of you who differ, well done. But this would be the game. If you're like a differential hunter, this would be the game. If you actually believe Sheffield can get something, well done. Aston Villa versus Manchester City. I will tell you for free, I am done with Matty Cash. Removed him, sold him. Now, moving on. Aston Villa tend to struggle against big teams, and I believe this will continue. Manchester City are the biggest team in England, and therefore I believe they will just be better. I'm hoping for Haaland to score, but my captain this week will be Salah again. I regretted it this past weekend, but Sheffield, you can't just pass up that game. However, I did put Haaland as captain versus Sheffield, and that was a failure. However, this game will be a Man City win. Now, will they keep a clean sheet? I doubt it. Manchester City aren't quite good at keeping clean sheets of late. It's been 6 games since their last clean sheet in the Premier League. And in all competitions, they've only kept 2 clean sheets in the last 13 games. So that whole Man City solid defense thing is a myth at this point. Aston Villa have a great record at home. I think it's 13 or 14 games unbeaten at home. So that could be an interesting thing to keep out for. They might draw this game. They might draw 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. You know? There will be goals in this game. It's hard to keep Man City out. And conversely, Aston Villa score. So it should be an exciting game. I believe Manchester City have the edge, but I don't think it'll be straightforward unless some red card type thing happens. Or Aston Villa crumble the way they did against Newcastle at the beginning of the season. And then we have Manchester United versus Chelsea. This is on Wednesday night, and this should be a fun game. Well, if you're a Chelsea fan, because you know Chelsea will bring it. If you're a Man U fan, maybe you'll be a bit shaky. In the last game for Chelsea, Enzo scored 2, Colwill 1. Badiashile, Mudryk and Jackson had the assists. The reason I'm reading this out to you is because it is difficult to know who will play for Chelsea and also where the goals will come from. All you know is that the goals will come. Sterling had a good run, but now maybe it will continue now. Maybe it was just a blip. I have no idea. It's so hard to predict anything from Chelsea. The only thing you know from them is that they will try hard. On the flip side, you can't quite say the same about Man U. I don't feel like they try hard. I don't feel like they like the manager even. I'm picking Chelsea as a favourite in this matchup because they tend to raise their game against teams of a higher reputation. Well, I wouldn't say higher reputation, but of a high reputation. And whatever you may think of Manchester United, they have a high reputation. With Manchester United, this is just one more losable game. I believe this is a kind of game their fans would want to win, but wouldn't be too disappointed with if they lost. Kind of like the Newcastle game. It's in that kind of a range. For Manchester United, at this point, maybe just have Onana if you have him. I don't know who else to bank on in that team. Is it Fernandes? I don't know. they have not been convincing even in victory except Everton. And so I don't know. I don't know how to predict a good Manchester United side at this point in time. Everton versus Newcastle. Well, Everton, maybe this game should just be, the scheduled loss where you look at the fixture list and you're like, oh, yeah, we're not going to win that one. I think this one is one of those games. I think they want to make it easy for Newcastle, but I believe Newcastle will be favourites in this game. Now, Gordon picked up a knock. Will he be back? I don't know. It's too soon to know. Does this affect their chances? Yes, it does. He has been one of their better players of late. For Newcastle, if you have Isak, I would say hold on to him. If you have Trippier, of course, stay with him. If you don't have Gordon, bring him into your team. And if you have him, just keep him in your starting lineup. For Everton, this one is tough. I wouldn't really recommend you to have a player in this fixture. If you already have them, well, maybe first bench, unless it's like Doucouré or Dwight McNeil, but I don't think anybody really has those two players. Best possible result for Everton, of course, desirably is a victory, but most probable is a draw. But I believe Newcastle are too good, unless they have those weird games like they did against Bournemouth. So I'm not bringing in Pickford in this game. Spurs versus West Ham. I was going to remove Son if he didn't score against City, and so he stays in my team. He is the biggest threat. Kululevsky is also an emerging threat, and I think those two, along with one of their wing-backs, preferably Porro, are the greatest threats for Spurs going forward. Lo Celso would be a great differential. Because of the injuries, he will play. He scored 2 games in a row. Why wouldn't he score against West Ham if he scored against Man City? West Ham are coming back to what they were. Darwin is back. Kudus is on great form. Kudus would be the guy I'd be looking towards as a goal scorer in this game. Of course, Bowen has a great record away from home. So there's that. James Ward-Prowse, but not at the expense, or rather not ahead of those other two. Konsa had an assist, so maybe he's back to his assisting ways. Expect Areola to concede a goal. Expect it. So, yeah, expect it. I'm so done with Areola. I'm so glad I removed him. And that'll be the end of the game week. And that'll be Thursday night. So, I'm just going to warn you guys. There may be fewer interviews or interviews done a bit later. December is the period where people fall off. And this is the reason why. The games start coming quick and fast. Players will also start getting injured because the space between the games is not enough for them to recover. And we still have Champions League. So, I don't know if you listened to the last interview I did with Mike. I told him in December, this is a make or break month. And this is when the group table is going to really split. Some of you will give up. Some of you will just bounce out of nowhere. Some of you will start disappearing. And some of you will create a gap in this table. And come a month from now, early January, this table is going to be looking quite interesting. So stay alert and be on top of things. We can't even take it 1 week at a time now. It's almost take it 1 day at a time. So with that, I hope you enjoy the game week. See you on Friday. Bye.